Hey everyone, welcome to section 8.9, question 34. So we have two portfolios that exist for investing. One is a bond portfolio with a beta of 0.7 and an expected return of 9%. The other is an equity portfolio with a beta of 1.5 and an expected return of 17%. So if these are the only two available assets for investing, what combination of these two assets, in other words, what weights for each combination of assets will be needed for the investors to get their desired level of expected return? And then later we'll discuss beta. But first, so we have three investors. We have a desired or targeted return. Okay, so let's take a look at Jerry first. Now let's consider our equation. And ultimately it's a weighted average. Okay. So if we're taking a look at Jerry, we know that his target is 16%, all right? So we determine how much of the investment in the bond versus the equity is going to give us that 16%. So in this case, ultimately we're solving for W, because we know the rate of the bond. We know the return of the bond. Okay, so the return on the bond is 9%. We're trying to figure out what the weight is. So that we don't know, weight of the bond. Okay, so that's what we're trying to solve for. Now the weight of the equities is going to be 1 minus the weight of the bond. So in other words, 1 minus W, okay, because remember, we only have two options. So for instance, if we invest, let's say 90% weight in the bond, then we know that 1 minus 90% is going to leave us 10% to invest in the equity. Okay, so 1 minus W is our, think of it as our weight of equity. Okay, and we multiply that by the return of equity, which we do know to be 17% in this case. Okay, so in other words, again, we're just trying to solve for W. And I know this is a strange way to look at it, so let's take a look at it algebraically. All right, so again, we just plug in our numbers that we know in our formula here. So we have our 16%. We want it to equal, so W, which is that weight that we're trying to solve for, times the return of the bond, which is 0.09, plus 1 minus W times the return of stock, which is 0.17. Okay, so if you go ahead and we remove the brackets, we expand, then we take our like terms. So we'll take the 0.17 over to the other side, and we end up with negative 0.1 equals negative 0.8 W. Divide both sides by the negative 0.8 to isolate the W, and we get 1.25. Okay, so let's just leave that here. So, and sometimes you may not get a exact or a rational number, so make sure you do the at least the final division in Excel. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so we know that that is the weight, so that's W. Okay, and well, what does that mean for the weight of equity? Well, it's just 1 minus the weight of the bond. Okay. Now, if you're really not keen on doing math, I understand it's not a math class, so you don't want to do algebra. Well, here, take a look at it from this point of view. All right, so we can punch that in again. So 0.16 equals W times 0.09, which is the return on the bond, plus 1 minus the W, multiplied by the return of the stock. And again, we have 1 over 8 as our answer. Okay, so we can also use that if you like. Pretend I didn't show you that. So let's punch that in. So in other words, and again, just to be clear, let's make sure that we have in the right format. So they are looking for percent with 2 decimal spaces. Okay, so in other words, we're going to invest 12.5% in the bond, and the rest is going to go into equity, which is, let's get the right one. Oof, that was close. I want some encouraging words. So that's 87.5. Okay. Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Okay. And finally, well, at least finally for this example, you can do the rest, is with the combination of the bond and equity portfolio, we're going to determine what the beta is. Okay. So now we know the weights. Okay. So now we want to take a look at our betas, or our risks. Okay. So what is our beta for bond? Well, beta for bond in this question is 0.7, all right? And the weight of the bond, we just calculated that, okay? And we also know the weight of equity, okay? And we also need to understand the bond of equity, okay? So our bond of equity in this question is 1.5. Okay, so we'll use a similar formula. Okay, again, it's just another weighted average, but if we take a look at it in terms of beta, okay, so the beta of the portfolio is again equal to the weight of the bond times the beta of the bond plus 1 minus the weight of the bond, or the weight of equity times the beta of equity, or stock in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the math there. Okay, so again, it's going to be our beta times our weight plus the other beta, in this case equity, times its weight. Okay, so you're looking at 1.4 beta. Okay, wonderful. So I'll let you complete the other two investments or returns, desired returns. Thanks for watching, and happy financing.